The sky above Keran 9 burned a sickly green. That was the color of surrender, at least to the Grail, the dominant species of this sector. It meant they had taken yet another world, another species kneeling before their might. The natives of Keran 9 were peaceful, kind, barely able to defend themselves. They believed diplomacy would save them. They were wrong. Their cries echoed through the wind tunnels of their capital, a sound like breaking glass and sobs tangled together. The Grail ships hovered in the sky like mechanical vultures, blotting out light, choking the sun, stealing hope. Their ground soldiers, 8-limbed things with metal-infused flesh, marched through the streets, burning shrines, taking prisoners, executing leaders. The message was clear. No one is coming for you. In the command chamber of the Grail mothership, Commander Vrax stood over a holographic map, talons clicking against the screen. Another world taken without resistance. Disappointing. I had hoped for a challenge. Resistance, one of his subordinates snorted, its voice like shards grinding together. No one dares fight the Grail. They all know what happens when they do. Still, Vrax narrowed his black eyes. There's one race we've yet to crush, one that's been oddly quiet. The Terrans. Vrax nodded. Yes, the humans. A silence hung heavy in the room. Even the most arrogant of the Grail officers knew of Earth's reputation. Not technologically superior, not the oldest species, but undeniably dangerous. They didn't conquer like the Grail did. They didn't rule. But when they fought like demons crawling out of hell. They're a dying race, another officer sneered, always fighting amongst themselves. Let them rot. Vrax stared at the image of Earth on the galactic screen. Let's hope they stay asleep. But Earth wasn't asleep. Earth was watching. And when the cries from Keran 9 reached their deep space listening stations, humanity listened. And they remembered. Remembered what it meant to be alone, to be underestimated, to be called primitive, to be colonized. The Council on Earth didn't debate long. There was no vote, no politics. Just a quiet agreement that echoed through every defense station, every underground military base, every battle-scarred veteran's heart. It's time. They sent the message to Keran 9 through a burst signal encrypted in ancient Earth code, just 3 words long. Help is coming. But the Grail intercepted the message. And they laughed. The humans? Help? What could a dying world do? So they turned their eyes back to Keran 9, ready to continue the purge. Until the sky changed. It didn't shimmer or scream, it didn't explode. It just cracked, like reality itself had split open, and from it came ships that didn't hum or glide. They roared, old battered warships covered in layers of mismatched metal. Some still bore the flags of Earth nations that no longer existed. The Grail couldn't understand how they even flew. They weren't sleek, they weren't pretty, but they were coming in fast. The first Grail cruiser tried to intercept. It was gone in 8 seconds. The second fell in 12, its wreckage crashing into the ocean, boiling the sea around it. And then they landed. They didn't send diplomats. They didn't broadcast warnings. They walked through fire, heavy boots, black armor scorched from past wars, helmets that reflected flame and fury, no insignias, no names, just one word burned into the chest plate of the lead warrior. Earth, and behind them, more followed. Not just soldiers, warriors, veterans, mercenaries, outcasts, the kind of humans who didn't fit in polite society, but fit perfectly in war. They didn't fight for conquest, they fought for the ones who couldn't. And as they marched through the ash and the screams, the people of Keran 9 looked up, and they believed. The Grail didn't understand it at first. Not just the speed of the attack, that was terrifying, yes, but the way the humans moved. They fought like they had nothing to lose, and everything to protect. It wasn't just about shooting and strategy. There was a rawness to it, something primal. When the first wave of Earth's warriors tore through the Grail's front line, they didn't stop to gloat or regroup. They kept moving, like sharks through blood-filled water. Commander Vrax watched it all from the observation deck, gripping the edge of the console hard enough to dent it. "What in the black void are they made of?" His second-in-command, Carrick, replied in a whisper. "They are. Not like the others. We've never seen anything like this." Vrax snarled. "They bleed like anyone else. Find their leaders. Cut the head off and the body dies." But that was the mistake most made with humans. There was no single head. No emperor, no hive mind, no central command. Just thousands of warriors, each trained to act independently, to improvise, to survive, and to make you pay. On the surface, a storm of fire and metal raged. The Grail used energy cannons that could vaporize stone. The humans brought railguns, high-impact kinetic rifles, and homemade explosives, brutal and imprecise, but devastatingly effective. And leading the charge was someone the Grail would never forget. Colonel Marin Shaw. Her face was hidden behind a scorched helmet, but every move she made screamed confidence earned in blood. Her armor was older than most of her squad, dented from campaigns on Mars, Titan, and Europa, but she still moved like lightning. "Squad Alpha, push right. Flamers, clear those alleyways. Bravo, on me! We're cutting their throat at the center." She didn't shout like officers from other species. She barked short commands, efficient and sharp. Her voice was calm, not cold, but focused, like a blade honed to the point of splitting atoms. A young Coronian civilian, barely standing on her cracked hooves, looked up at Shaw as she passed. The girl was trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. Who are you?" Shaw stopped for only a second, turned her helmet just slightly, and replied, "Earth. We came late, but we don't leave friends behind." Then she raised her rifle and blew through a Grail-armored walker like it was made of paper. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they didn't care. Where the Grail relied on hierarchy and careful planning, the humans brought chaos, guerrilla tactics, close-quarters combat, knives in the dark. The Grail elite, trained for structured war, couldn't adapt. One human, Corporal Tay Navarro, was pinned behind a collapsed statue, blood pouring from a wound in his side. He gritted his teeth and looked to his AI-assisted targeting scope. "3 left," he growled. "Let's dance." He rose with a roar, pulling a Grail officer toward him and slamming a knife into its eye, then grabbed its weapon and used it to mow down the rest. When his own gun failed, he used fists. When fists failed, he used teeth. And when the smoke cleared, Navarro stood alone, coughing, laughing. "You bastards forgot one thing," he spat. "Humans don't quit." By nightfall, Keran 9's capital was half liberated. Human dropships landed wherever they could, bringing more soldiers, medics, supplies. The streets glowed with fire and freedom. In one of the shattered buildings, Shaw sat on a cracked bench, helmet off, sweat running down her face. A fellow soldier, Lieutenant Griggs, lit a cigarette beside her. Griggs exhaled slowly. "Think we made a big enough entrance?" Shaw gave a tired smile. "They thought no one would come. Now they know better." Griggs nodded, eyes scanning the ruined skyline. "The Grail won't forget this. They're not supposed to." And above them, in orbit, Commander Vrax watched the horror unfold with mounting rage. His world, his order, was unraveling. The humans had not only come, they had awakened something terrifying. He turned to his fleet. "Summon the Warbringers. Earth has declared war." But Earth didn't declare war. They became it. The Grail didn't understand it at first. Not just the speed of the attack, that was terrifying, yes, but the way the humans moved. They fought like they had nothing to lose, and everything to protect. It wasn't just about shooting and strategy. There was a rawness to it, something primal. When the first wave of Earth's warriors tore through the Grail's front line, they didn't stop to gloat or regroup. They kept moving, like sharks through blood-filled water. Commander Vrax watched it all from the observation deck, gripping the edge of the console hard enough to dent it. "What in the black void are they made of?" his second-in-command, Carrick, replied in a whisper. "They are. Not like the others. We've never seen anything like this," Vrax snarled. "They bleed like anyone else. Find their leaders, cut the head off, and the body dies." But that was the mistake most made with humans. There was no single head, no emperor, no hive mind, no central command. Just thousands of warriors, each trained to act independently, to improvise, to survive, and to make you pay. On the surface, a storm of fire and metal raged. The Grail used energy cannons that could vaporize stone. The humans brought railguns, high-impact kinetic rifles, and homemade explosives, brutal and imprecise, but devastatingly effective. And leading the charge was someone the Grail would never forget: Colonel Marin Shaw. Her face was hidden behind a scorched helmet, but every move she made screamed confidence earned in blood. Her armor was older than most of her squad, dented from campaigns on Mars, Titan, and Europa. But she still moved like lightning. "Squad Alpha, push right. Flamers, clear those alleyways. Bravo, on me. We're cutting their throat at the center." She didn't shout like officers from other species. She barked short commands, efficient and sharp. Her voice was calm, not cold, but focused, like a blade honed to the point of splitting atoms. A young Coronian civilian, barely standing on her cracked hooves, looked up at Shaw as she passed. The girl was trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. Who are you?" Shaw stopped for only a second, turned her helmet just slightly, and replied, "Earth. We came late, but we don't leave friends behind." Then she raised her rifle and blew through a Grail-armored walker like it was made of paper. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they didn't care. Where the Grail relied on hierarchy and careful planning, the humans brought chaos, guerrilla tactics, close-quarters combat, knives in the dark. The Grail elite, trained for structured war, couldn't adapt. One human, Corporal Tay Navarro, was pinned behind a collapsed statue, blood pouring from a wound in his side. He gritted his teeth and looked to his AI-assisted targeting scope. "3 left," he growled. "Let's dance." He rose with a roar, pulling a Grail officer toward him and slamming a knife into its eye, then grabbed its weapon and used it to mow down the rest. When his own gun failed, he used fists. When fists failed, he used teeth. And when the smoke cleared, Navarro stood alone, coughing, laughing. "You bastards forgot one thing," he spat. "Humans don't quit." By nightfall, Keran 9's capital was half liberated. Human dropships landed wherever they could, bringing more soldiers, medics, supplies. The streets glowed with fire and freedom. In one of the shattered buildings, Shaw sat on a cracked bench, helmet off, sweat running down her face. A fellow soldier, Lieutenant Griggs, lit a cigarette beside her. Griggs exhaled slowly. "Think we made a big enough entrance?" Shaw gave a tired smile. "They thought no one would come. Now they know better." Griggs nodded, eyes scanning the ruined skyline. "The Grail won't forget this. They're not supposed to." And above them, in orbit, Commander Vrax watched the horror unfold with mounting rage. His world, his order, was unraveling. The humans had not only come, they had awakened something terrifying. He turned to his fleet. Summon the Warbringers. Earth has declared war, but Earth didn't declare war. They became it. In the dead hours before sunrise, Keran 9 was quiet, but not peaceful. The air was thick with smoke, ozone, and something heavier. Fear. Not from the civilians anymore, but from the Grail. The mighty invaders who once marched through cities like gods now hid in the shadows, whispering about the ghosts in human armor. The way they moved, the way they didn't break. Commander Vrax had pulled his remaining troops back to the fortified inner districts. A ring of turrets, drones, and Grail warwalkers surrounded the last intact government stronghold. "Let them come," he said through gritted fangs. "Let the humans throw themselves into the grinder." And Earth did send more, not in the form of numbers, but in names. Names that the Grail didn't know yet, but would come to fear. One of them arrived just before dawn. His drop pod pierced the upper atmosphere like a falling god, crashing into the war zone outside the city walls. Out stepped Major Elias Rourke, tall, broad-shouldered, face carved from stone and fire. His armor was custom, jet black with streaks of red, not for intimidation. Those were bloodstains that never washed out. Rourke was the man you called when all hope was lost. The last resort. They said he once fought off an alien hive using only 2 bullets, a broken shoulder and the jawbone of a fallen friend. They said he didn't die, he just got meaner. Colonel Shaw met him in the ruins of a collapsed temple, her expression tired but focused. "Didn't expect to see you, Rourke," she said. He cracked his neck. "Didn't want to come back. Earth politics was cleaner than this mess, but Command said you needed someone to break the wall." Shaw nodded once. "The Grail are dug in deep. They've mined the approach. Triple defense lines, auto turrets, and war walkers at every angle." Rourke chuckled. "Sounds like my kind of party." A silence stretched between them. Mutual respect, old scars. "You know," Shaw muttered, "they said the Grail never retreat." "Then we'll teach them how," Rourke replied, loading a fresh mag into his heavy repeater. "Pain is a better teacher than pride." Down in the city, civilians watched as more humans arrived. Not just soldiers, but engineers, combat medics, drone pilots, and off-world resistance volunteers. People who had no reason to fight, no glory to gain, but came anyway, because Earth didn't fight for reward. Earth fought for those who couldn't. In one of the makeshift hospitals, a young human medic named Aisha Rami worked tirelessly, stitching up a wounded Coronian child. Her hands shook from exhaustion, her uniform stained. But when the child opened his eyes, he didn't flinch. He whispered, "You're not like the Grail." She smiled softly. "Neither are you." And in that moment, something shifted. Hope wasn't just whispered anymore. It was growing roots. But back in orbit, the Grail's real response had arrived. From the blackness of deep space, 4 colossal ships emerged, each the size of a mountain, their surfaces covered in glowing red etchings. The Warbringers, the Grail's elite death fleet, deployed only once in 3 centuries. They didn't communicate. They didn't warn. They targeted Earth's ships immediately, and the skies burned. 2 human destroyers were torn in half within seconds. The third, UNS Nightfall, fought back, unleashing every torpedo, drone, and beam it had. It held the line long enough for hundreds of drop pods to escape. On the surface, the humans saw the glow in the atmosphere and knew what it meant. Shaw cursed under her breath. "They brought the Warbringers." Rourke just grinned, a scar splitting the corner of his mouth. "Good. It wasn't fair before." "You're insane." "I'm human." And then, all around the city, human squads moved into position. This wasn't a hit and run anymore. This was the real war. one that Earth didn't start, but damn sure intended to finish. The siege began before the sun had a chance to rise. The human forces moved in silence, not because they feared being heard, but because there was no need to talk. Every soldier knew their role. Every breath, every step was deliberate. These weren't reckless warriors charging into glory. They were wolves, calculating, patient, hungry. Colonel Shaw crouched behind the twisted remains of a burnt-out Grail tank, her HUD flickering with tactical readouts. The inner district was ahead, wrapped in concentric rings of defense. Energy barriers, turret nests, motion-triggered mines, and rows of Grail infantry waiting like carrion beasts. At the center was the Stronghold, ugly, jagged, and pulsing with enemy power. But Earth had brought more than soldiers. They brought pain wrapped in strategy. "Rourke, status?" Shaw whispered through comms. Rourke's voice crackled back, low and steady. "Planted charges on the west generator. Give the word, and their whole defense net flickers like a dying light bulb." Shaw gave a tight smile. "Words given." And like that, boom! The western wall of the district lit up with a thunderous blast. Fire, metal, and shrieking Grail flew sky-high as the generator collapsed, shorting half the defense grid in one glorious burst. That was the cue. Earth's warriors surged forward, not like a uniform line, but like chaos. Some stormed head-on with shields raised and rifles blazing. Others darted through side alleys, flanking and backstabbing. Drones swooped in overhead, dropping EMP bombs and flash charges that disoriented the Grail formations. Lieutenant Griggs, chewing a stim gum and grinning like a lunatic, led a team through a sewer vent, emerging behind a turret nest. "Peekaboo, ugly," he said before dropping a plasma grenade into the Grail nest and diving for cover. The explosion sent debris flying into the sky like confetti at a funeral. The Grail were powerful, but they were built for domination, not desperation. Earth's fighters were used to desperation. It was in their blood, written into their history, tattooed across their DNA. And when the Grail's second barrier line fell, this time to a coordinated airstrike led by two half-retired Martian pilots in rusted starfighters, the enemy began to panic. Commander Vrax stood deep in the Stronghold, staring at the live feed from a dozen drone eyes. One by one, the feeds cut to static, fire, or the sight of a human in black armor wiping blood from their visor. "They're breaking our perimeter," Carrick said, voice trembling. "They're not breaking it," Vrax growled. "They're eating it." He activated the final lockdown, bringing the inner sanctum into full defensive mode. 4 shield walls rose. Automated guns snapped into position. Even the corridors began to flood with a neurotoxin meant for non-Grail intruders. But he had forgotten who he was dealing with. In the sky, a single dropship screamed through the atmosphere, engines at full burn. It wasn't supposed to be there. Not on any manifest. Not scheduled for insertion. Inside was a woman with silver hair and one eye, Dr. Elia Vorn, Earth's top war engineer. She wasn't a soldier, but she was far more dangerous. She had come not to fight, but to end things. As the dropship collided with the edge of the Stronghold's east wall, it detonated in a flash of blue light. Not a normal explosion, a gravity rupture bomb. Experimental tech so volatile it was banned on Earth. The east wall didn't explode. It folded in on itself, crushing half the enemy's defensive systems in one reality-warping implosion. The humans poured through the breach like blood through a wound. Major Rourke led the charge, firing twin rifles with surgical precision. He didn't scream, didn't rally. He just moved like death-wearing boots. And then the fight inside the Stronghold began. Close quarters. Brutal. Screams echoed through the halls. Human blades clashed with Grail talons. Shotguns tore through armor. Explosives rocked every corridor. Rourke kicked open a sealed door and found himself face to face with a Grail warlord, nearly 8 feet tall and clad in reactive armor. The two clashed with bone-crushing force, trading blows that shook the walls. The Grail had strength, but Rourke had hate, and pain, and purpose. He drove a knife under the warlord's chest plate, twisted and whispered, "This is for Europa, you freak." When the Grail fell, Rourke stood over him, breathing hard. "All squads," Shaw called over comms. "We're in. Final sweep. Let's find Vrax." Outside, the remaining civilians of Keran 9 watched the human banners rise above the smoke. A single word scrawled across it in Old Earth script: "No one left behind." And from orbit, the Grail Warbringers began to move again. This time, retreating. Because for the first time in centuries, they were afraid. Smoke still curled through the halls of the Grail stronghold like dying breath. The screams had quieted. The gunfire slowed. But no one relaxed. Not the humans, not the Coronians, not even the dying Grail. Because every soldier who had survived more than one war knew, it's never over until you find the body. Colonel Shaw pushed through a half-collapsed corridor, her boots crunching over glass and bone. The lights above flickered. Blood, Grell, human, and something else, streaked the walls. Her squad moved behind her, tight and silent. They were deep now, beneath the stronghold, into the heart of the beast. "Thermal scans are lighting up like hell below," Rourke's voice came through her comms. "Something's powering up. Not more defenses? Number something bigger." Shaw clenched her jaw. "All teams converge. We're not pulling out until we've got Vrax's corpse or his command core." They pressed forward, and then came the sound. Low, pulsing, wrong. Not machinery, not weapons. A heartbeat, a deep, slow rhythm that echoed through the metal, like the fortress itself was alive. Dr. Elia Vorn's voice came over the comms, tight with urgency. "Colonel, you need to see this, now." Within minutes, the senior squad met in what looked like a control chamber. But the walls weren't metal. They were organic, pulsing, breathing. In the center was a cocoon-shaped pod, suspended in a column of blue liquid. Inside floated something horrific. "Is that Vrax?" Shaw asked. "No," Vorn said, stepping forward, her face pale. "It's something worse." The figure inside had a Grail shape, but stretched, altered. Parts of its body were mechanical. Other parts were human. A human brain partially visible through a transparent skull dome. Human bones fused into its arms. "Jesus," Griggs whispered. "They've been experimenting." Vorn nodded. "It's a hybrid. They've been trying to make a warrior species, to fuse their strength with human adaptability." Rourke stepped closer. "This isn't a lab, it's a womb." "And it's nearly done growing," Vorn added. "We're not looking at a warlord. We're looking at the Grail's next evolution, one designed to beat us at our own game." Shaw raised her weapon. "Not today, it's not." But just as she pulled the trigger, the pod vanished, flickered out of existence. A hum filled the chamber. Then a voice. Vrax's voice, echoing from speakers laced into the walls. "You came too late. You think you've won. You think you've broken us. But this was never the war. This was the seeding." The ground shook. From beneath the chamber, something rumbled. Vorn cursed. "They've got a failsafe, something buried under this structure." Griggs backed away. "Please don't say planet killer." "I'm saying worse," Vorn muttered. "I'm saying it's a signal beacon, a deep space call to their core fleet. The Warbringers were just scouts. This wakes up the real monsters." Shaw didn't hesitate. "Rourke, get everyone out. We're not going to disable it? No time. You think I'm gonna run? He growled. She stepped forward, shoved a detonator into his chest. You're gonna blow it after I get deep enough. If it's a signal, we kill it at the source. Rourke locked eyes with her. No. Shaw didn't blink. You don't outrank me. He hesitated, jaw tightening. I'll hate you for this. She gave a half smile. I know. And then she turned and ran into the tunnels alone. Behind her, the chamber shook again. Alarms screamed in alien tongues. The heartbeat was louder now, desperate, angry. Above ground, the sky split open again. A new ship entered orbit, massive, old, scarred. Not Grail. Earth. The UNS Requiem. An old flagship once thought lost in the outer void. And from its hull came a single transmission. This is Admiral Hana Vex. Reinforcements are here. And we're bringing the wrath of a dying world. Shaw, deep underground, heard it too, and she smiled. Let's finish this. The tunnels beneath the Grail stronghold were a maze of flesh and steel. The walls twitched, pulsed, breathed, alive with some kind of biomechanical horror. It wasn't a base anymore. It was a womb. Colonel Shaw pushed deeper, rifle raised, steps steady. The further she went, the more her comms broke apart, static eating every word. She could no longer hear her team. Couldn't even tell if the detonator in Rourke's hand would still link to the charges she carried. Didn't matter. She had one job now. Stop the beacon. End the nightmare. Behind her, the war still raged above the surface. The arrival of the UNS Requiem had changed everything. It wasn't sleek or beautiful. It was ancient. A blackened beast held together with spit, grit, and the bones of fallen comrades. But it was packed with every forbidden weapon Earth had kept hidden since the last interstellar accord. And Admiral Hana Vex wasn't here for diplomacy. This is Earth, she'd said across every open channel. You attacked our allies. You tortured our people. You tried to become us, but you don't have our soul. Now we're going to burn your sickness to ash. From the Requiem's underbelly, orbital lances began to rain down like the judgment of dead gods, incinerating Grail positions, melting tanks, and cracking defensive bunkers like eggshells. In the sky, Grail warships turned to flee, only to be hunted by Earth's long-range skirmishers, pilots who'd been waiting for a fight like this their whole lives. But underground, Shaw wasn't thinking about that. She reached the central chamber. Massive, round, pulsing with crimson light. At its center stood a monolith-like spire, glowing blue. The beacon. It was humming now, louder than before, sending pulses up into the sky. Every few seconds it shimmered, distorting the air around it. And then it spoke, not in words, but in screams, voices, thousands of voices, human, Grell, Coronian. The beacon had been built with organic matter, mines harvested and fused into the signal structure. It wasn't just calling for backup, it was becoming aware. Shaw stumbled back, head spinning, blood dripping from her nose. The thing was psychic, reaching into her mind, pulling on memories. It showed her Earth burning. It showed her soldiers begging for death. It showed her failing everyone she'd ever led. And then, it made her a promise. You don't have to die, it whispered in the voice of her dead sister. You can become part of the new order, a commander in the next evolution. All you have to do is step into the light. Her finger hovered near the detonator on her chest. And then a voice cut through the madness. Faint, but real. Shaw, you reading me? Rourke, faint static, then clearer. Don't do it. I found another way in. We can disable the power nodes. We can kill this thing together. She blinked. The beacon pulsed harder, sensing its grip slipping. You don't need him, it hissed. They always abandon you in the end. They always leave. And Shaw, beaten, bleeding, alone, laughed. Yeah, she whispered. But he came back. She lifted her rifle and fired at the nearest node. The pulse shorted. The room screamed. Up above, Vorn, Griggs, and a unit of demolition experts swarmed the tunnel's outer edge, planting backup charges. Vorn's voice echoed across her local comms. "Shaw, just hang on. We're almost synced." But it was too late. The beacon flared blinding white. The hybrid wasn't in the pod anymore. It was here, 9 feet tall, plates of armored flesh, human eyes set into a Grail skull. It moved like a demon set free from a lab of horrors. Shaw turned, breathing hard. "So, you're the future?" It smiled. "I'm what Earth could have been, if it wasn't so weak." And then it lunged. The fight was brutal, fast, messy. Shaw's armor cracked under the hybrid's blows, her shoulder dislocated. Blood poured from a wound in her side, but she moved like a soldier who'd been dying for years and just hadn't had the time to stop. She jammed a broken blade under its ribs, fired 2 shots into its throat, took a punch that knocked her 10 feet back, but still stood. And when the hybrid lunged again, Rourke arrived. He hit it with a sonic grenade, dropped down with a roar, and tackled it into the side wall. The two struggled, fists and claws flying, until Shaw dragged herself up, bleeding and coughing. "Rourke!" she shouted. He saw her, threw the detonator. She caught it, punched the override, and stared the hybrid in its stolen human eyes. "This is Earth's answer." Then she dropped the charge, and the world erupted. Silence, heavy, total, almost holy. For a long moment after the explosion, the world just held its breath. Dust rained from the cavern ceiling like snow. Glowing fragments of the beacon drifted through the air, burning out mid-float like dying fireflies. Then came the cough. Wet, raspy, human. Colonel Shaw pushed herself up from a pile of broken stone, her body screaming in every nerve. Blood soaked the side of her face. Her vision was swimming in red. But she was alive. She blinked through the smoke, heart pounding. The beacon was gone, ripped out at the roots. The monolith had collapsed into molten slag. The walls no longer pulsed. The chamber was still. Dead. But Rourke. "Rourke!" she rasped, dragging herself forward. "Rourke, respond!" A groan answered her, then another cough. From behind a crumpled support beam, he pulled himself free, bruised and bloodied, one arm limp and hanging. "Hell of a punch," he muttered, spitting blood. "You owe me drinks." Shaw actually laughed. Short, dry, pained. "Only if we get off this rock." Above them, the tunnels began to rumble. Earth forces were drilling through the collapsed stone, their signals blinking back into her HUD. "Rescue inbound," Shaw said. "We've got maybe 5 minutes." But before Rourke could answer, a voice came through the comms. High priority, encrypted, marked urgent. "This is Admiral Vex. Immediate stand down on all orbital fire. Repeat, do not engage the incoming vessel. It's not Grail." Shaw blinked. "Not Grail?" Rourke frowned. "Another human ship?" "No," Vex replied, her voice tight, controlled. "Something else just dropped out of FTL. Old signal code. Pre-Earth Exodus." "Pre-Earth... what?" A silence followed. Then Vex said 2 words that didn't make sense. "It's Terran." Shaw's blood ran cold. "That's not possible. The Terrans are extinct. They left the galaxy 500 years ago." "Yeah," Vex said, "and now they're back." The ground above rumbled harder. Something massive was landing, just beyond the horizon. Energy readings were off the charts. Non-Grell, non-human, but familiar, like DNA buried deep in human memory. Then a transmission came across all human channels. A deep, cold voice, human in structure, but stripped of warmth. "You've declared war against genetic progression. You've destroyed a project we began long before the Grail ever existed. Earth does not speak for all of humanity anymore." Rourke's face twisted. "Who the hell are they?" Shaw's stomach dropped. They're us, a version of us. Dr. Vorn, listening from topside, broke through. That signal matches old colony probes, ones launched before Earth unified. They didn't die out. They evolved, alone, without us. They think we're the broken ones, Shaw muttered. A final message came through from the Terran ship. You were warned. Now you'll be corrected. And with that, the Terran vessel released a single object. Not a weapon, a seed. It struck the scorched center of Keran 9's capital and began to grow. Black tendrils, metallic vines, a pulse of impossible biology winding into the cracks of the wounded world. And everywhere it touched, the Grail corpses began to change, not reanimate. Transformation. Their bodies twitched, rewired by the seed's energy, bones cracked, flesh hardened, eyes opened again, blinking with a new light. Rourke stared in horror. They're not just calling reinforcements, they're rewriting the dead. And above it all, the Terran ship hovered like a god returning to reclaim its flock. Humanity had come to save Keran 9. But now, another version of humanity had come to take it. Shaw had seen war. She had seen cities collapse under orbital fire, watched friends bleed out in her arms, heard the scream of a dying world crack the sky. But she had never seen anything like this. The dead didn't just rise, they evolved. Twisted Grail corpses convulsed and split open, bones reshaping under invisible blueprints, skin hardening into armored plates. Their eyes glowed a soft white. Not Grail, not human. Something else. Something programmed. Across the capital, human forces pulled back in confusion and horror as the battlefield began to change under their boots. Keran 9 itself trembled. The black seed in the center had spread its roots into the planet's crust. It pulsed like a second heartbeat, rewriting everything in its reach, biological, mechanical, even time-worn stone. On the Requiem's command deck, Admiral Vex gripped the railing, eyes wide. They're terraforming in real time, genetic warfare, tech no species should have access to. Dr. Vorn's voice came through comms, panicked. It's Terran-level manipulation. They're not just altering DNA, they're overriding evolution. They're seeding their version of perfection onto every atom. On the surface, Shaw and Rourke stood side by side, backs to the ruins, facing the rising wave of hybrid horrors. More of the transformed Grail were emerging, limbs clicking into place, muscles grown over nanofiber bones. They were fast, efficient, void of emotion. They're not soldiers, Rourke muttered. They're tools. They're warnings, Shaw said, gripping her rifle. This isn't war. This is a message. The Terran ship still loomed above, silent and unmoving, and then a smaller vessel detached from its underbelly and descended, sleek, black, and humming with alien calm. It landed just outside the city, where the dead Grail had fallen silent in rows, as if awaiting orders. From its belly emerged a figure, humanoid, human-sized, but wrong. Perfect posture, skin too smooth, eyes too still, not armored, not armed, just exact. It walked toward Shaw and Rourke as if it had all the time in the galaxy. When it stopped 10 feet away, it spoke in flawless Earth standard. I am Prime Representative Helix of the Terran Ascendancy. You've interfered with a controlled restoration. You've destroyed property vital to the future of our species. Shaw stepped forward, teeth clenched. You call that property? Helix blinked slowly. It was potential. You discarded it out of fear. You're reanimating corpses. We are preserving usable design, upcycling inefficiency. And you're doing it on a world that asked us for help, Shaw snapped. You weren't invited. You hijacked the Grail's invasion, hijacked the whole damn species. Helix tilted its head. We offered them continuity. They chose extinction. Rourke raised his rifle. You came here to threaten Earth? Helix's expression didn't change. We came to offer correction. You've deviated too far. Violence, decay, tribalism. We are returning humanity to its optimal form, unity, precision, purpose. You mean control. We mean survival. At that, the ground began to crack again. The seed was spreading further. Vines tore through the soil like knives, wrapping buildings, converting them into metal organic hybrids. Skies darkened as weather began to shift unnaturally fast. Then the real threat came. From orbit, 5 more Terran ships decloaked, each larger than the last, each brimming with more seeds. Vex's voice came through, sharp. They're preparing full-scale overwrite. If they drop all 5, Keran 9 is gone, and Earth is next. Shaw looked at Helix, something dark and ancient stirring behind her eyes. Then I guess we remind you of something you forgot. Helix paused. And what is that? She raised her weapon. No fear, no hesitation. That real humans? We don't evolve through control. We evolve through resistance. And with that she fired, straight into Helix's synthetic chest. The shot didn't kill him, but it triggered everything. The Grail hybrids surged forward. The Terran ship began charging weapons. Above, the Requiem repositioned, deploying its final arsenal. Project Black Rain, an illegal kinetic bombardment system banned after the Pluto Accords. Earth hadn't used it in 100 years. But today, all bets were off. Target the seed, Vex commanded. Kill it, even if it takes the whole damn planet. Approved, Shaw said into her comms, pulling Rourke back as the storm of war began again. All over Keran 9, humans rallied. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were the line. Engineers with hammers, medics with pistols, pilots crashing broken ships into enemy hives. And one by one, they pushed the Terran tide back. Not with better tech, not with evolved minds, but with the one thing Earth had always had, that no clone, no AI, no programmed being could ever replicate: free will. In the final moments, the Requiem's cannon lit the skies. A single round, heavier than a city, screaming toward the seed. Shaw looked up, Rourke beside her, both knowing this could be the end. And she whispered, "This is for the ones who had no voice." Impact, white light, silence again, and when the dust cleared, the seed was gone. The hybrids were dead, the Terran ship was retreating, its cloak failing, systems failing, underestimating Earth's madness for one last time. Keran 9 was broken, but free. And Earth had reminded the stars, you don't fix humanity, you survive it.